Hello, my friends. Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast. It's just after 2 p.m. on Saturday, December 3rd, 2016. We're almost at Christmas time, New Year. I can't believe we'll be writing in or typing in 2017 before we know it. It's always shocking how long it takes you each year to get into the habit of actually having the right date there. But I've had a lot of trouble lately. I am a liberal. I'm a Democrat. I don't want to be a caricature of that. I don't like the idea of people thinking that I'm biased, but we're all biased. But I've had a lot of trouble. I haven't been able to do one of these podcasts in quite some time. I haven't done a solo podcast. I couldn't believe when I looked it up since October 23rd. Shows you how much time moves by. And I haven't done a podcast in general since November 11th. I did 2 podcasts over 2 days on November 11th and November 10th, both with guests. First one was Dan Pellick. The second one was with Joshua Jacobs. And they were very therapeutic for me, to be honest. I got a lot out there. I almost needed somebody to talk to in that moment. The initial shock of Donald Trump winning the presidency and all that was going to come with that, to have all branches of government bended towards his way, even though we don't know what his way is quite yet. He may be a liberal, or not a liberal. He may be Democrat. He may be Republican. He is whatever he is. He's sort of an open for business kind of guy. Whatever goes. I don't think he has very much patience. I don't think he has the ability to spend too much time on something. That's the typical kind of CEO salesman type of role, and that's kind of scary. Although I've really been having a lot of trouble with the fact that, is this really going to mess things up? Is it really going to ruin America? And I'm not saying that from the point of view of I'm going to be behind him. And then I'm thinking, I just go over my own biases in my head and how I feel about this. And I had an 8-year run here of a president who I really wholeheartedly believed in. Really, the Obama wave swept me up into politics in a way that I think it swept up many people. It made us believe in the good of politics. It made us believe in the good of people and the good of leaders, and somebody having just been really a citizen of America who could walk down the street and no one would bother him maybe 4, 5, 6 years before that. I mean, he was a known name ever since his major speech at the 2004 Democratic National Convention, but he was a citizen of the world. I mean, there were people who were being taught by him, I think, in a law school in Chicago. Can you imagine your teacher, and then all of a sudden that teacher is the president, probably within 10 years' time? I mean, that is astounding. And he brought with him kind of all of our hopes in many ways. But was it all of our hopes? Was it half the country's hopes? Because I'm seeing a lot of that now from folks who are maybe being kind a little right of center. I'm seeing people get swept up in the Trump wave now, the same way I felt I was getting swept up in the Obama wave. You're seeing people get really behind a lot of the things Trump is doing. And he hasn't really done anything terrible yet. Now, you can't really do anything terrible yet, I would say, because he's the president-elect, the POTUS, as they've been calling it, hashtag POTUS, president-elect of the United States of America. But it's the idea that this man is coming into power and just the fear, I think, from one side of what that could mean. I live in a bubble here in New Jersey, in the New York metropolitan area. I actually found it interesting that where Donald Trump is from, nobody wanted anything to do with him. New York City, the state of New York, New Jersey, this area. And interestingly enough, Hillary Clinton was born and raised in the Chicago area, and she did carry Illinois. But you think to the fact that she was a first lady in Arkansas, her husband became the president of the United States, and before that was a governor in Arkansas. And look at how much Arkansas didn't believe in her, didn't vote for her. Now, I know that can be Democratic, Republican type of feel, but that to me was a weird sign that where each of these people spent a lot of time of their lives. I mean, Hillary spent a lot of time in Arkansas. Trump has spent his whole life in New York as his basis of operations and his life. And each of those places completely wanted nothing to do with either of those people. I mean, it's kind of fascinating when you think of it. But Donald Trump hasn't done anything yet, but just the very thought of him making decisions for the country, just the thought of him, how much he's thinking about things, and our thoughts are really that he's not thinking about these things very deeply. Isn't it funny, actually, how Bedminster, where his Trump National Golf Course is, that when you're seeing the pictures where he was meeting with all the people, I think on the first weekend, I think he's gone back there potentially on a weekend basis, although he did spend Thanksgiving at Mar-a-Lago in where is that, Palm Beach or so down there. But he pretty much has this setup there in Bedminster that kind of with the colonnades looks like the White House. So when they're taking pictures there and it's kind of a tight shot, you see the columns and you see the white and you're like, oh, it's the White House. The other weird thing with that is a lot of people, myself included, think of Donald Trump as the alternate 1985 Back to the Future Biff Tannen, the one who got the Gray's Sports Almanac in 1955 from the future 2015 Biff Tannen, who went back in time in the time machine, the DeLorean, to give that Gray's Almanac to young Biff, teenage Biff, who then could take that almanac, which was going to be predicting the future basically, because it was 1955. I actually have a little facsimile of it up in my podcast studio here, but for basically the next 50 years or 40 years, it was going to tell you every major sporting event and what the conclusion, what the result of that event was. And he was able to bet on everything and bet on winners to the point where he became filthy rich. And the alternate 1985 Biff Tannen, who was filthy rich, had a huge casino. It was Biff, just like it sounds like Trump. He had the funny hair. So even back at this time, we were making fun of the idea of Donald Trump and what he is. He was a caricature, and who cares if he's a caricature when he's not affecting all of our lives to such a large degree? And anyone who doesn't know this, Bedminster, where Donald Trump's national golf course is, was actually bought from, of all people, John DeLorean, which of course was the namesake car that was that futuristic looking car that was eventually used in the movie Back to the Future as the time machine. I was reading something, I think it was in The Economist, where they were saying that his company, as much as he wants to say it's a global brand, it's amazing. Look, I'm not going to say the person hasn't made a ton of money. He started with a big investment, or he started with a big inheritance from his father, and he did a lot with that. A lot of people said if he took that money and just put it in an index tracking fund for the next 30 or 40 years, he'd be richer. But I'm going to give the guy credit. He wanted to do something more than just be a passive investor. So he made his name an important name. I mean, we know the name Trump. We know the name Donald Trump. It's on everything. Whether some of those things were failures, when we're talking steaks, we're talking wine, we're talking liquor, we're talking Trump University, whether we're talking Atlantic City casinos, they could have been a lot of failures, sure. But his name is on everything. We know who he is. He went to The Apprentice. We all watched the show, at least initially, and it was a good show. It was interesting to see all these people vying for his business interest, and then to have the boardroom and him and his kids on the side just telling the people their fate, who was going to be fired that day, and that you're fired. We all watched it, but we all kind of didn't take him seriously because he wasn't affecting our lives. He was in a little corner. He was entertainment. He was making all his money. The thing I was getting back to with the Economist article, it was saying that his business, I think in America, is the 833rd most lucrative business in the country. That's not a lot. That's not Fortune 100. That's not Fortune 500. And I don't even know off the top of my head if that Fortune ranking has to do globally. But he's just squeaking into the top 1,000 of American companies. So big time job of him taking that kind of platform and his name getting out there. Now his name is going to be on the level of a Mount Rushmore in some ways. He's not going to get on there. There's only 4 people on there, but his name is in the presidential history books. I mean, he's going to be there. And my only hope, in the hope that I don't want to root for our country to go down in any way so that this man can fail. I want good things to happen. I want to at least keep the lead that President Obama has given this man. I was comparing it to a middle relief and a starting pitcher in the World Series leaving the closer with a 3 or 4 run lead to close the game out with an inning to go. We saw what happened in this World Series where Chapman did give it up. Now, Chapman was tired. He pitched a lot, and he ultimately was able to stem the tide once it was tied. Actually, there we go. And the Cubs did go on to win. But you can always blow it, no matter how good the lead is. And there's going to be a lot of policies that Trump does that are going to be candy to the masses. He's going to, cut tax rates for very rich people. He's going to unleash a lot of the money that's been saved. He's going to potentially do big infrastructure projects, which I do agree with. I think that's a very good thing. But it's going to spend a lot of what's been saved. And we know what happens after we spend. Everyone's happy when you're spending in the moment, but where are you left in years when you don't have money, when you don't have that rainy day fund, when potentially the next crisis happens? We had the housing crisis, which is now coming up on 10 years, which is amazing when you think of it. I think it was September of 2007. So we are in the zone of being a decade out from that. People forget how terrible that was. A lot of it was stemmed by a government giving a major stimulus bailout to banks, giving a major stimulus bailout to investment banks, to retail banks, to everything to stem the flow to major car companies. And we gave a lot out, and we did end up stabilizing it. You don't have the counterfactual where you can see, hey, this is what would have happened if we didn't do these bailouts, but they did them. We got stemmed. Are we in a perfect position right now? No, we're not in a perfect position, but we are at a ridiculously low unemployment rate. Now, a lot of people can say, well, that's kind of a false statistic because it doesn't include people who have left the workforce or aren't looking. Yeah, I know that, but the unemployment rate is amazing. I mean, to be honest, as a number that we've always kind of tracked, sure, you can give little reasons and footnotes of why it's not this or that, but he's been left, Donald Trump that is, with a really good platform to move forward as a country. You hope he doesn't blow it. You hope he doesn't focus on things that create crisis. We talk about the housing crisis. Crisis can come from war, going to war. You have a man in Donald Trump who is fighting with people on Twitter after he's been elected. He can't stand when people come after him. Another thing I was reading about him is when you think about it, his greatest metric is applause. It's to be patted on the back for doing a great job. It's to get the applause. It's why he is still doing rallies. You're the president. You don't need to go do a rally where they're still wearing their hats and the Make America Great Again and they're chanting lock her up still. He already said he's not going to lock her up. He doesn't want to hurt the Clintons, he said. But he's in this mode. He needs applause. And a lot of what you see with the presidency, it's 90% being hidden away, meeting with people, meeting with Congress, meeting with aides, keeping the government rolling. And is that going to be enough for him? And do we want Mike Pence doing it? I don't think so. But it really comes back to the fact I don't know where to stand on this. I have to keep waking up and living each day. Has my life been thrown upside down yet? No. But I enjoy following the news on politics and following the news on what's going on in our country. And instinctively, reflexively, I keep saying every time a news thing's come out, I'm looking for the negative in it. The Carrier deal that he did where he kept, at first they said he kept 1,000 jobs onshore here. Well, really in America, not so onshore because all these jobs were going to leave to go to Mexico. He gave a very big tax abatement so that Carrier would keep what ended up, I believe, being upwards of 800 employees, but there's still 1,300 going to Mexico. So yeah, he did keep 800 with a big amount of money going to, I think it was $7 million going to Carrier as a tax abatement in order to keep them here. Now, people do this all the time. I mean, in many ways, we saw these kind of these tax abatements going for entertainment and movies. And you would see places like Detroit. There was a movie, Gran Torino, which was a big one that, what's his name? Clint Eastwood did. It was the final movie, I believe, that Clint Eastwood appeared in, and he directed it. But that movie was there. You know why it was in Detroit? Yeah, I know it was about car, Gran Torino, whatever, but it was there because there was a major tax abatement given to people who would make movies in certain areas. Why were there 1 million movies shot in New Orleans for like 5 to 8 years? It's because you were getting a major tax incentive to shoot a movie there. So all of a sudden it's like, Brad Pitt's buying a home there. They're rebuilding the city from Katrina, all this. Benjamin Button is shot there. I'm sure Benjamin Button could have been there in the story in general, but it was really there because, hey, let's build the story around these tax incentives. Breaking Bad, I believe it was in New Mexico, kind of because of the tax incentives. So these things happen. And then what happens is, I think most of the time the local government or the government, statewide government, finds out that, this didn't actually work out for us. We lost the tax we would have got from that production being here. And there's that whole trickle down. Well, people will live here now for that period of time that movie's there, the actors, the crew, the directors, all that. And they'll bring money into the towns that they're staying in while they're here. We saw a lot with Pittsburgh actually as well. And I think a lot of times they do the math and it didn't turn out that great. And then a lot of the lives were sort of upended, everyday life, to shoot these movies there. Is it a net positive? Is it just a net neutral? I don't know. But you see a lot of these abatements get removed, and maybe it's because changes in government or whatever, but you see them get removed, or because the entertainment entities want to get greater incentives to continue to stay. And so you see them move on to the next place that'll give it. There's a reason tons of movies aren't shot in New York or different places around the country that would make a lot of sense, and why we're like, whoa, that's strange that there's movies shot in these strange places. That Breaking Bad is in New Mexico. That's interesting. And yes, it brought a lot to New Mexico. It probably helped with tourism when people want to do tours. It probably helps with, there's a lot of people who probably don't even understand what Mexico looks like, New Mexico looks like, or what goes on in there. And this helps. And it makes it makes you see through that entertainment, show or platform. It makes you see what that state looks like and the beautiful panoramic views it does offer. But this thing was with Trump was, sure, he saved 800 jobs, it looks like. We're going to have to find out what was in the wash here. It's interesting that it happens to be in the state that his vice president was a governor. That's kind of interesting to me. And it's interesting that he was talking about this very thing throughout the whole campaign and then happened to have it take place right after he's elected. But our other business is going to come looking for the same things. And why should I be sitting here trying to criticize him for this in general? Reflexively, I do it though, and I need to fix my own psychology here. I want President Obama to be here for as long as possible. I would have loved Hillary Clinton to come in even as a placeholder for this kind of governing style, which I appreciate. I would have liked the people she brought in with her. I was kind of comparing it to Barack Obama was like Breaking Bad, the show, the great show. You had Bryan Cranston at the head of it, and he really made everything great and won tons of Emmys and just it was a career-changing role. It made him what we see, even though he did a great job on Malcolm in the Middle as a father in a comedy, but this just changed our conception of what he is. He did an amazing job. And I almost considered that to Obama's presidency. And then the Hillary presidency could have been like Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul doesn't have Cranston, at least to date. It's focused on the kind of comedic lawyer, black comedy lawyer that was in place, Saul Goodman. And it gives you many of the same cinematography looks. It's the same locations. It's got a lot of the crew that was on the show, and it's got the writers. So it was very good. It's got the infrastructure. It's worth watching. Is it Breaking Bad? No. Does it give you a spin-off, nice kind of taste of that feel of Breaking Bad that we might be missing? It does. And that's what I thought Hillary Clinton could have been. Better Call Hill or something like that. It wouldn't have been President Obama, but it would have kept infrastructure. It would have been a placeholder. It would have given you a taste of what you liked about the last 8 years. Now we're left with a complete unknown, and I don't know how to handle it on a daily basis. Again, I reflexively go negative. And should I be doing that? I don't think so. Should I be allowing Donald Trump, who won the presidency, should I allow him to get a chance to move forward with some of his policies? Economics, that's a main focus. Infrastructure, that would be a focus with me. And then do I fight like hell when it starts appearing that there is going to be nativist sentiment going on, where we're going to start having registries for Muslims, things like this, when the tenor of the country changes to the point where it's a nasty place there was a place of decorum for the last 8 years. Now, were the Republicans just feeling like I feel now with Obama? Did they reflexively hate, and I'm seeing this now, did they reflexively hate everything that President Obama did? Did his very presence on TV, on cool shows, he's coming across a cool guy, did it drive them nuts? Was he like the quarterback who gets all the girls and it's great and the glory, and now they have their guy in place and they're getting that feeling of being boosted and bolstered by it all, and they just hated everything he did? That's possible. And it's important for everyone to feel this. If you are an Obama Democratic side supporter, it's important to feel the flip of government. This is what government's about. I would have felt, I keep saying this to everybody, think about where we would have been in 2012 if Mitt Romney beat President Obama. We would have never known that Donald Trump was a potential on the horizon to win. I believe he was kind of flirting around the presidency in 2012. He might have got involved a bit on the Republican side, but we really felt like it was kind of a silly thing that would have never happened at that time. And when Mitt Romney made it through, when we didn't have the idea that 4 years later Donald Trump could ever win this thing, where we would all just be shocked, and all the things he said, and he just kept saying these terrible things. The President Obama birth certificate birther movement, he was like on the vanguard of that thing. It was terrible. But I keep thinking to myself, if Mitt Romney beat President Obama, would I be as heartbroken? And I would have been. Again, if I knew that Trump could win, I wouldn't have been as heartbroken at that point because I would have had a different choice. But I still, from a point of view of believing in the policies, believing in the personality, believing in the aura that was President Obama and everything he could bring to the table, I would have felt heartbroken. I really would. Now, when that Mitt documentary on Netflix came out, and I implore anybody to watch that because it was a fantastic show. And I think that Mitt Romney, I wouldn't have felt so bad. Now, I didn't want him to beat President Obama. I was so invested in Obama. He was the reason that I came into politics with that wave, and I haven't stopped. I haven't stopped reading about it. I haven't stopped just soaking in everything I possibly can, the way he thinks, his cabinet, all the things that go into it is just so cool. And I think a lot of people feel that way with Donald Trump now because he's coming from their way of thinking. And I have to allow for that. I don't think my bubble is changing very much. Now, I live in a town that voted like 60% or 58% for Donald Trump, which was a shock to me because I'm on the outskirts of this liberal bubble, I guess. Once you get out to the western part of New Jersey, you start getting into that area where they almost call it Pennsyltucky. It gets very rural in the middle of the country, and I'm pretty close to it. Now, there's a lot of it where I've loved that. I love being a little bit in middle America. We're in a nicer kind of area than you might see. Nice homes, beautiful neighborhoods, great places in town, very modern, it's beautiful. But man, 58%. And then I looked it up, 62% went for Romney. So I guess it's just a Republican place. But this bubble is going to keep me insulated, I think, from a lot of the things that are going on in the rest of the country. And the duality of the country is just really scary because they're all on. And I have to be careful to not reflexively just go after Trump. I have to be careful. When he comes out with the terrible things, I'll go full bore, and I will dare his supporters to back a Muslim registry, to back getting rid of all these immigrants who have been in this country for the whole time. That's not who we are as a country. That's not where we're going as a country. There was enough of a last gasp of people, and maybe not enough enthusiasm of people who were there for Obama who didn't come out for Hillary. There was enough for them to get over the line and to win this and to get potentially this gasp. But if Trump starts focusing on these things, and he might, if he loses economically, if he loses in Congress with pushing through some of these things, which are not Republican kind of policy, when you're talking about huge spending things. And by the way, building a wall is a huge spending thing. Building the infrastructure up to go into every town in America and get rid of 11 million illegal immigrants. That is a ton of money. These are very much against what was supposed to be a small government conservative feel. So let's see if those things go. But my fear is a lot of the economic miracles. They're miracles. They don't just happen. And a lot of times they don't happen immediately when you drop that water on the plant. It takes a while to grow to figure out that it was a miracle. And he's going to get a little edgy on things not happening quickly. And does he then manufacture something to come in to be the hero? Does he manufacture some kind of war footing? Does he manufacture something? And again, this week, the Taiwan thing, where he took a call. He's just taking calls from world leaders right through Trump Tower, apparently. They can call right into the switchboard and get sent into Donald Trump. And all the State Department is like, oh, we usually spend a week going over briefs and saying what you can say and doing what you can. There is a part of that, I'm going to be honest. I like the idea that someone's just calling into the president, because I think a lot of this stage managed, stagecraft, statecraft, all that kind of is, sure, you can tell me it's necessary, it's important, but it's keeping a lot of people employed with what could be an artifice. Sure, we know the history. We need the historical precedent of what happened in China and what happened in Taiwan and all this, and we need to know so we could talk. But if conversations are completely stage managed, why even have them? You already know where people stand. There's something to the foreign policy where Donald Trump just taking the call from Taiwan, the first president or president-elect to take a call from Taiwan since like 1979 from a leader in Taiwan. There's something about that I think is interesting, because does China completely respect us as a country? Do they do things that we agree with as a country? And do we acquiesce to some of these bad things in order to keep an alliance together and to kind of just pretend like what's happening there is not happening? They can't even look up the Tiananmen Square. There are people who live there who don't even know it happened if you were born after it. You're not even allowed to search it on their version of Google, which I believe is called Baidu. You can't even look it up. So a lot of times these young Chinese people will come over to Europe or America to go to college, and they start seeing a history that really happened in their country, and they're completely blown away by this. They're completely shocked and awed. It's like, wait, what? And then you go back, you can't search it, you can't look it up. There's no docket that this even happened. So there is something where the unknown of Donald Trump to a lot of these countries, aren't we the hegemon? Aren't we in charge of the world in some ways? So if the hegemon takes a call from something that might be an arrow in the side of China, how much is it really affecting? All because Taiwan doesn't want to be a part of China. They don't want to be the quote unquote one China. And that just irks Beijing and China to no end. Maybe China maybe it doesn't hurt for them to be a little thrown off of where the relationship could go. Maybe they need to earn something from us as well. So look, there's way more to this, obviously, than I'm just saying, but there is a part of me with this one thing. Reflexively, I keep using that word. People just want to come out and go, oh my God, Donald Trump doesn't understand history. He doesn't understand how anything works. He's just taking calls from Taiwan. Oh my God. And it's like, okay, really? Is this really an issue? Is China really going to lose it all over a call being forwarded right into Trump? Taiwan's playing Trump. They know what they're doing. Sure they are. That's all what politics is. But Donald Trump is a businessman. He's seen a lot of failure, so he understands failure. He doesn't want to fail. He doesn't want to fail in the greatest business opportunity he's ever gotten. He doesn't want his name to go down as a terrible president. For all he's done, for all he's been able to hide about being a terrible, potentially a terrible name in Atlantic City, put with his names on the casinos, to have all these failures. And by the way, failure is a part of being a great business person. A lot of the greatest technology innovations have come from failure, from entrepreneurs trying, failing, and then succeeding because they had the germ of an idea. I've always said Twitter started because of a failed podcast company called Audio. The examples are legion. Apple was failing when they had John Scully in charge, the Pepsi CEO, that, by the way, Steve Jobs helped put in place in his initial time in Apple. And then he was pretty much shot to the side and gotten rid of in Apple, Steve Jobs, that is, and then had to come back from the sort of the dead of being not seen as a great leader of a company. And that's when he got into Pixar, and then when he made Next Computer, and then Apple ended up buying Next Computer, but Apple was in the dumps, and he helped bring it all back from failure, to be honest. And so failure is not something that we should automatically look at and say, oh boy, Donald Trump's a failure, blah, 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 blah. You know, he got the presidency. His name is a known brand name in the entire world. And power is going to irk a certain percentage of the populace, because power means you're coming in and you're hurting something that was pre-existing there, especially if you're in the building trade. But he's been able to build very big structures in New York City that have his name on it, that very important people end up living in and believe in the luxury of. So there is something to him. And look, to be president, you have to be crazy. You have to have no governor, pardon the pun, in your being to even push through to be it. I mean, it's just, it's outlandish to become a president, and he became it doing it his way. So I'm going to be very on top of the social things, because I think once those social things come out, and they can't be rumors, because I'm seeing things come out from people who are friends with me. And if I'm coming across that way to people who view my content and the things I say, it sounds whiny. I'm not trying to be whiny. I'm in shock that this guy won, because I didn't think this was where the country was. But there is a large part of the country who fell for it, who fell for the snake oil, and he's going to have to, his referendum will come from them. And we're not in a point yet, though, where he could let them down. I mean, there's nothing, he's not even the POTUS yet, he's the POTUS. So once he's in place, the 100 days is where a lot of things happen. That's where a lot of what's going to happen in the rest of that 4 years take shape. The first 100 days, it's that famous time period, time parameter, and he's going to have to show that it all. He's going to show his hands then. You know, he's going to be at the poker table, and we're all going to see the things they do. And at that point, we're going to have to be a conscious objector. We're going to have to be an opposition. I don't know how loyal, but we're allowed to be an opposition. We can call it as we see it, however we want to go for it. And all of these branches of government are going to have to, they're going to still have to work together, even if they all are Republican. They're going to have to work together to get these things through, and through an America that is going to maybe be outraged by it. But we'll see. It's hard. It's hard, folks. If you're on the side of democratic justice, if you're more liberal, if you're more open to the world, this is a hard pill to take. And everything you read is about what Donald Trump is doing and this and that. And I don't want to just be negative, because I can't live that way. I can't live negative for 4 years. A lot of good comes from it, though, personally. When you are challenged, when something's coming at you, when something is just anti to everything you believe. It's sort of like I did a podcast about the Westboro Baptist Church when Phelps died, the guy who started that. And I said, a lot of times when you would see those God hates fags people outside of like military funerals, sometimes you need that element there to know what you stand for. Because when you're just winning, as the liberal cause was winning for 8 years, it's hard to just, you know, another win is another win. You just keep moving along. But when you have something that's going against you, that's pushing against the things you believe, it makes you a different person. It changes how you move ahead in the world. It changes whether now you want to be involved in politics. Now you want to go into that local Democratic office and say, what can I do? It gives you some purpose that you might have not had before, because things were just going swimmingly. Sometimes you need that aspect of something being hard. I just finished the book, the hard thing about hard things, or whatever it's called, from Ben Horowitz, the great venture capitalist and entrepreneur. And it's like everything in this book, it shows you, even when you win, you were on the cusp of just losing and failing and losing everything you have. It's so close. The line is so close, just as it was here between winning and losing, or one side winning and one side losing. Some of these states, it was 10,000 votes. Another was 20,000. Another was 80,000. And that was Pennsylvania, which is a huge state. So the line is there. There's still a large part of this country who doesn't believe in this man and what he's doing, but we do need to allow him to do what he won. We need to allow him to come out with what he wants to do, and then we can object to it if it's completely horrendous against what we believe. But we also have to be careful with something like the carrier deal, or with something like potentially if he's going to do infrastructure, or with the people he's appointing. They're not people that are going to go to dinner with us and have a beer. I mean, they're just not, or a glass of wine, I guess people would say for liberals. They're not, or martinis. But this is the prerogative of the person who wins. They're going to put in place those who align with their side of the government. And of course, we're not going to be happy about it. but you got to let it happen and then just object as they start to promulgate the policies that they want to put in place. And let's see where it ends up. Because if you take what was a pretty much a slim win on a vote count, if you think about it, I mean, Hillary was 2.5-3 million more votes in general. But if you take a slim win and take that to believe you have a full mandate to push through everything you've ever dreamed of pushing through from one side of the aisle, that's actually going to help in the midterm elections and the next elections, the next presidential election is going to help to give fodder to the other side to easily go in and try to vote you out. And if you do some of these policies that liberals might find terrible and, dare I say the word inhumane and all this, and people still vote you in next, then we say, well, this is how it works. I mean, unfortunately, it's where we are. It hurts, but that's where I've been because I haven't been able to even, I've just started to come out of the slump. It's almost like someone passed away. Someone could take that and then say, oh, whiny liberal. No, this is how I feel. You're not going to talk to a person who doesn't read more, who doesn't care more, who doesn't look for research and information. And sure, you could say it's a bias, but it's not. It's reading what I want to read. It's where I want to go. But I spend so much time just trying to be conscientious. And this was hard. This hurts. I mean, I couldn't get myself up off the mat to do podcasts. It was because I was like, what do I talk about? I don't want to just keep talking about politics, even though here we are and I'm like 40 minutes into politics when it was just supposed to be an opener. But how am I going to talk about the NBA? How am I going to talk about the NFL? Who cares? How am I going to talk about this comedy thing I watched? Who cares? But it's stages of grief of some sort. And I did find myself coming out of it lately. I've come out of the funk. I have purpose to be entertained again. And I have purpose to continue to read about these things, to stay up to date, to know what Donald Trump is trying to do, to try to discern if what he's doing is neutral, is bad, is good. We don't know yet. We just don't know, but just keep yourself involved. Keep reading. If a piece of news looks insane, that goes for the left too, because some of this stuff is, you're finding out now that news makes money by being, by being really just out there. By being sensational. That's the word I'm looking for. You're finding that news that's sensational gets all the clicks. And so that's what's getting shared. And it's confirming biases that people have to a real extreme. Children, here's the rape ring with children with Hillary Clinton. It's like, guys, can we look this up? This is crazy, or whatever it was, child rape or whatever. And then, you're like, what I just reflexively, again, the word of the day here, what I've been doing is I'll just go to New York Times, I'll go to Washington Post, I'll go to Google to search the offending content that I'm coming across on Facebook. And then I can quickly see that it's all these right-wing, very right-wing sites sharing this piece of content that maybe came from a tweet that somebody, took from a small piece of something that wasn't even true. And I can see that, okay, this isn't true. And I've been wondering, like, maybe there needs to be a site apart on the New York Times or Washington Post where they take every single rumor. And what was it with Obama, fight the smears or whatever, to take every rumor and then to actually answer what the truth of it is, if there is any truth in that rumor, or where it's been bastardized, to put that out there. But it's hard. And that's why you just got to double down. You get through this feeling of hopelessness and you double down and you re-energize and you try to get as much as you can into what's going on to be as educated as possible on everything that's being done. It's just where you got to go. So that's where I've been, and I'm trying to get back up. I'm going to have guests. I've reached out to Jeff Pearlman about being on for Gunslinger. I just finished that book. That was a really good book. I did it by audiobook. Just a fascinating story. I love the idea of someone like Brett Favre, coach's son, growing up in rural Mississippi, and somehow, going to high school and not even throwing the ball more than dozens of times in his whole high school career as his dad coached him. I think he did like almost an option or handed off the ball all the time. He didn't even get really college offers, and there was someone who was new in the job with Southern Miss and was just looking for someone because he was late in the game on recruiting and had to come back several times to even see Brett Favre throw, and he would never see him throw in games. The dad didn't let him. It's kind of different than what you saw with Pete Maravich's dad, Press Maravich. He was a very similar coach in the way that Irv Favre was to Brett Favre, where he was very disciplined. It was very controlled, top-down type of play. The coach tells everyone what to do, very command and control. And where Irv Favre had Brett continue to run that controlled offense, Press Maravich allowed Pete to become pretty much the Steph Curry of his age and just to do whatever he wants on the basketball court. And he rode him to success to even become the LSU head coach while Pete was there. So it's a real interesting dichotomy there. But then to come up through the ranks and for Brett Favre to make it as he did at the highest levels he did, that to me is so fascinating. That you could be in high school and never be throwing the ball, and to have this cannon for an arm that you're really never getting to use, and then for somebody to find you and to give you that little shot to go to Southern Miss, to be a quarterback. He beat Alabama. He beat, I believe, Georgia. He had some just outlandish wins against some major teams, and then to get the shot and then to make it to Green Bay and to do everything he did. It's fascinating. It's a great book, really great book. I always like the stuff with athletes and just getting through my own picadillos about infidelity. It's always shocking to me because pretty much anytime you read, I read the Parcells book, I had Nuno Damasio on, I talked to him, and with that, even coaches are unfaithful. So when you're a player, I'm always like, is there a player who's faithful? I mean, does it even pay to be faithful? When you're in your 20s, even when you get into your 30s, everyone's coming at you. Everyone's giving up themselves to you, women. How do you turn? I mean, look, I sit here as someone who's not being just harassed by women. Well, not harassed, but who's not being slobbered over by women who just want to be with you, who do everything they can to be the perfect match for that evening. And it's hard. And then you throw alcohol in, and a game like football where you're only playing once a week. I know you practice a lot, but there's a lot of free time. I'm often very unsettled by the unfaithful aspects, the infidelity. But then I'm like, wow. But if you're in your 20s and you happen to be married, that's why Jeter was always great. You shouldn't just don't get married. Why you get married if you're an athlete? I don't get it. By the time your career's over, even at the latest end, you're going to be like 37, 38. Even at the farthest end, you're going to be like 42. And at that point, a lot of people start families anyway. So why don't you at that point find the right person? They know who you are at that point. They know you've made your money. They know you're on the backs, you're on the outside looking in from that life of just expensive things and being young and being stupid in a lot of ways. They know you're in that position at that point. You're a little more mature. Why don't you go and do it then? I mean, I think Derek Jeter ended up getting married. You never know whether it actually happened or not, but I believe it did. But why not just live the life of a Viking when you're a player, to not have anything in the way, and then just to wait till it's all over, to be a bit of a more mature person, and at that point have a wife and have kids, because you're not moving them all around the country all the time and all that, and you're getting the best of both worlds. And I never understand it. The interesting thing with Brett, though, was he ended up having a daughter when he was in college with his girlfriend. So who knows? And the girlfriend ended up being Deanna Favre, obviously his wife, and he was very unfaithful to her in much of their marriage through his time in Green Bay and Atlanta, although they weren't married at that time. They got married after he got out of his rehabilitation for the pain pills. He did get married, but he continued to be unfaithful. And so you wonder, if he did not have that daughter with her, would he have stayed with her? Was that the thing that even kept her connected to him, where he was going to be unfaithful? Would he have gotten married? I mean, who knows? But the book is just absolutely fantastic. I do have a note out to Jeff, who was on my podcast for the book Showtime about 2 years ago. Actually, on the day that Phil Jackson was announced as the head coach, or as the president or whatever he was of the the Knicks on that day. That's when we had him on for that. That was a great interview. So I'm hoping he'll come on for this because I think there's a lot of cool aspects with this. And Jeff's got some politics going on. He's a real sharp guy. And I like the idea. He now lives in LA. He was living in north of New York City at the time, in the suburbs there, somewhere around New Rochelle, I believe. And so he was living there, and after Showtime, he fell in love with LA and ended up moving there. We talked about it in that podcast about how much we loved LA and the idea of it, and he went for it. And you can do it when you kind of have a portable job like that, which is kind of cool. But I like the idea of this guy who's lived on the coasts, and then for the Favre book, he was visiting and talking about the middle of the country. When you think about from Mississippi to northern Wisconsin, I always think it's interesting with Green Bay that it's even north of where the Netflix documentary Making a Murder took place. Like there was a part in Making a Murderer where they're like, oh, they left and went north to go shopping in Green Bay or something, or to go to the gas station. You're just like, oh my God, Green Bay's up there. But I like that he had to travel there to Mississippi. He traveled to Green Bay. He was in the middle of the country. He had Minnesota there, obviously, with Brett at the end. And Brett had the one little year with the Jets, which was, it was an interesting chapter for me to read because he didn't want to go there. And he ultimately just lost his way with the Jets, and he wanted out. He was out of his house like 3 days later where he was renting. But I like the idea that he was in these places while this whole kind of burgeoning middle of the country was taking shape with this Trump phenomenon. And I'd like to get his thoughts on what it was like, if he noticed anything when he was there doing his research in those states that kind of gave him a portent of what was to come. So speaking of Making a Murderer, actually, I've been doing a lot of podcast listening as I get myself back with this true crime boom. It's amazing how many podcasts came out after Serial, where these local newspapers, these local public radios use Serial to give them license to do the same thing for themselves. There are so many cold cases around the country. There are so many Adnan Syed's type stories around the country that these papers and these entities, these public radio entities, use Serial as a template to go and do it themselves, and to do it just as well. I was looking on iTunes, and I came across this one called In the Dark by APM Reports. So this is Minnesota Public Radio. Wow, what a podcast that was. It was about this kid, I believe in the 80s, named Jacob Westerling, who was in the news a lot for kids who were taken. He was taken by pretty much a pedophile who ended up having done this to many kids, and he was killed. And no one ever found his body. There was no signs of what happened. As this podcast goes through through the stages of things, the local police was just, they weren't up to snuff on getting this thing done. And they missed obvious clues and, obvious investigations and all things like that. So it was fascinating to go through this podcast, this little nook of Minnesota, and how life was changed by this kid going away and being gone. And I got the sense, listening to this podcast, that how well this public radio outfit did their investigation, that by the end of it, they actually, the police and the sheriff's offices, they actually found Jacob Westerling. They found the body like 27 years later. So that was an interesting subcurrent, but it's just so fascinating to get deep into these things. It almost feels like you're reading fiction, how well they're done. And there's just so many stories, and it's so sad. When you have a kid, it's so sad to hear these stories about how with life, kids could go out on their bikes to go rent videos, and it didn't matter if it was late at night. And that feeling of sort of carefree insouciance just left the building. And so that was a good one. But I got all these ones I got to listen to. There's one called Accused from the Cincinnati Enquirer about the murder of a woman in an Ohio apartment in 1978. Crime Town just came out from Gimlet, the makers of Startup, the kind of for-profit podcast company that came out of This American Life, just as Serial did, to be honest. But this is from the creators of The Jinx, which was a fantastic true crime video endeavor that went on HBO about Robert Durst, where they actually had the Got You in the show, where he admitted to doing all these crimes that they were investigating him for on this show. But this crime town is investigating American cities and the culture of crime, and they were starting with Providence. So I got to get into that. There's one I have in the queue called Up and Vanished, and that explores the unsolved disappearance of a Georgia beauty queen and high school teacher. It's an 11-year-old cold case. My friend Sean Penna, who's been on the podcast, actually told me about this one. He just had his second child, a daughter, and on the day that his daughter was born or the day after, he sent me a text asking me if I'd heard this. And I said, geez, are you listening to all these like true crime podcasts when you just had your second kid? Must make you paranoid. But he was all in. And then the last one I got to get on, there's probably tons of others if you want to let me know, but Untold. And it's the story about the biggest cover up in the history of the British police and how they got away with it. It's about a private eye named Daniel Morgan. I still have to listen to it, so my summary is not going to be very good, but it has to do with the police and private eyes and the news of the world, Rupert Murdoch's outfit, which got caught in that whole phone hacking scandal. So there is so much going on in these nonfiction as fiction type storytelling endeavors. Podcasting is just booming. I'm loving it. Television, I've been watching a lot. It's been hard because I've been doing some work on the side for a magazine and doing all the social media. So it's taken a lot of my off hours time that I used to have, especially for TV time. And I've been doing a lot of the work while football's on. So I'm sort of half watching football these days, NFL. And plus when you have a kid, it is hard. I have a 2-year-old. He just turned 2, Liam. And, he goes down for a nap at 1 p.m. So I put him down at 1 p.m. on Sundays, and then I'm able to watch the football game. And the best case scenario you'll get from him is he'll wake up at 4:15. Fantastic nap. But often he can wake up as early as 3:15, 3:30, and he'll stay in bed and just continue to roll and do his own thing. And if you were to go up and try to get him at this point, he wouldn't want to come out. He has a real slow-going way of waking up. He's like one of these people who just... He would wake up on the wrong side of the bed if you woke him up when he truly wakes. He wants to go through this whole routine where he's kind of rolling. He's playing with his 2 owls he has in bed. If you go up there, he wants you to give him books that he'll read in bed. And it can take him up to 30, 40 minutes before you're actually allowed by his standing to get him out of there. So football's hard because anybody who watches football knows that 4 p.m. is when all the games are coming to a head. And if it's a game for a team that you root for, it's hard. And sometimes the wife just doesn't understand that. The woman in your life doesn't understand it. She sees that your ability to watch from 1 to 3:45 is an amazing window where, wow, you got to go, you got a hell of a watch there. That must have been great. And you're sitting there going, yeah, it's great, but it's the next 15 minutes that make it all pay off. I mean, who cares that I watched 2.5 hours at this point? I need that last half. I mean, that's everything. And then what happens is you kind of get into this passive aggressive, turning on aggressive kind of war of words about what you need to do and like let's truth be told, gentlemen, we haven't even gotten to the 4:00 games yet, which I watch in a very distracted state. I have the Red Zone channel on and I try my best to stay up with it. But it's hard. Football takes a beating from that. It used to be the great sport because you only had to devote the one day to it for the most part. And there is word that they might be getting rid of that Thursday night game, which will be great. I don't mind for the Thursday night game if they have Thanksgiving, obviously, and then from that point forward, you have Thursday games. It's almost a little more fair because now you've set the standard for the Thursday game, and it was good for Minnesota, who ultimately lost, though they did cover the spread, which was just amazing when you think they were down by 8 and then they get the touchdown, which puts them down 2. They needed the 2-point conversion to tie the game, but they didn't get it, and so they lost by 2 and it was a 3-point spread. They fell into it. But for Minnesota, it was good. They played on Thanksgiving and then they played on the next Thursday game. So that gives them the required rest you really need to give your best effort. And so did the Cowboys, obviously. But I think if you get to the point where Thursday starts from Thanksgiving on, people are more invested. It's getting cold. The games really matter. And you could probably play off pretty well with any kind of buys that might be left. You can play off of that Thursday game where you have a lot of teams playing that day, and it gives you a chance to get good rest for those teams. And there's not as many weeks left at that point. I mean, there are, but it's not outlandish how many games are left. I think the Thursday is a scourge when you think about it starting at the whole season. I don't mind if the Thursday night game actually starts the season as well, but I just don't want it every Thursday. I can't watch the games. If it's my local team, I'll watch it. I remember the Jets beat the Bills on a Thursday night. That was a really good game, but I can't invest in the game, and so I'm just wasting not watching a good football game. I mean, it's kind of pointless, and it just it de-emphasizes First of all, it kills Monday Night Football, which has been killed anyway because it's on ESPN. So it's almost like it's not happening. Again, unless it's your team playing, you could take it or leave it. Sunday is the deal. And even Sunday, getting rid of the 9:30 start for London would be a big win as well. So football needs to be basically 1 and 4 on Sunday, with a game or two outside of it. I mean, that's really where it's got to get. It's too overexposed, and it's right around the corner at every step. I like having the full week to prepare for the games, to go over what's going to happen. I mean, before you know it, the pick sheets are coming out if you're in pick leagues against the spread, and you're like, oh my gosh, I missed the Thursday. Like, it's too much to keep up. And with fantasy, it's just too much. Too much football. We give you a whole day. Don't try to be stealing other days. Please. But yeah, I think that, I don't know where I was going with that, but with kids. So it gets hard with that. So there's very little to watch. And when you try to do other endeavors outside of work time, it's especially tough. You have to take your time, and you have to schedule out as if you're at work. You have to schedule out your outside normal personal life. I mean, even now I'm doing this podcast while my son is sleeping. But when I look at the monitor, he's starting to wake up a little bit. You just got to hope he gets himself to 4. You're in a better position. But I have been sneaking and tweaking into a little bit of TV where I can, especially if there's shows that are getting critical acclaim. So a couple I've been watching, Atlanta on FX. It's a good show. And it's a good show because it's showing you a different side of America. It's coming from different voices. This isn't coded racist language, but it is about black culture in Atlanta. And Donald Glover wrote it, and he stars in it. And it's a funny drama comedy. And it's only about 22 to 25 minutes per episode, so you can really go through them. But it's very, very good. It almost reminds me of Master of None, the Aziz Ansari product show that's on Netflix. It's got a little bit of that, and it's based around characters Donald Glover created. And Donald Glover, I didn't really know about this guy, but he was, Tina Fey kind of became a mentor and then let him be a writer on 30 Rock. And then he ultimately became a character on 30 Rock, I guess playing a college student. And then all along, he's been a rapper named Childish Gambino. I've been listening a little bit. It is pretty good stuff. I'm not huge into the rap game, but it's interesting stuff. It's got some flavor. It's got some soul. It's nice music. But I like people who are multi-talented, multifaceted in different writing endeavors. And this show's really good. It's based in Atlanta. Again, about a 25 minute show per episode. And it follows the Donald Glover character Earn, his cousin, who's a rapper named Paperboy, and then the right-hand man of Paperboy, who's always around. He's always been kind of there. And he's one of these guys who comes across as, you think he's this really dumb guy, but he's got just some amazing philosophy to him. Just he's a very smart guy underneath the veneer that he's displaying. But the story is basically Earn was a dropout from Princeton. So he came from Atlanta, went to Princeton, dropped out. He's down on his luck. He has a girlfriend who doesn't really want to be with him, and he has a daughter with that girlfriend. And the girlfriend, you're kind of exposed to the story as it goes, which I sort of like. So he'll be with his girlfriend, and you just think it's this family. Maybe they're married. Then you're exposed to the fact he has a daughter. And then the ultimate reveal is the girlfriend talking about going on dates with other guys. I mean, it's interesting from that point of view. But Earn is really kind of down on his luck. He can't get good business. You know he's really smart because he went to Princeton. So he's really being underutilized as a person, and he's not living up to his own potential. And he notices that his cousin, Paperboy, B.O.I., is really starting to take off in the rap scene, and especially in Atlanta. And so he, I guess, hasn't seen his cousin in a long time, and makes a visit to him. He lives sort of in a project type of deal, and convinces him to let him manage him, kind of. I mean, you kind of don't get a sense that he totally allows it, but he lets him get in on it. And so I'm not fully through. I'm about halfway through, but it is a really, really good television show, Atlanta on FX. It's just, the comedy is hilarious, as I guess comedy should be, right? It should be funny. The comedic moments, but it's got a lot of drama to it. It's shot really well. Really fun cameo appearances that come in. There's one episode that I just finished, which Has to do with a celebrity basketball game, and Paperboy is in it, and then Justin Bieber is in it, but Justin Bieber is played by a black guy, which was an interesting take, and it's hilarious to see this character who's very full of himself, who's very much as we expect Justin Bieber is, but to see him in this role playing basketball, and he's kind of like preening over Paperboy, and Paperboy's getting crossed up, and all kinds of funny stuff is happening there. So that's a really good show. Another one I'm watching, everyone's watching it, Westworld on HBO. As my wife and I have had a lot of things going on this fall, we made it through one episode, which took us like 5 days, because we start watching stuff on the iPad in bed, and you get like 15-minute increments of shows. But Westworld is good, and everything I hear, I sort of see Facebook posts about it. You see fan theories, all this stuff. My gut is it gets really, really cool and good and deep into kind of that world where you don't know what's going on, so everyone's taking guesses, and that's like how Lost was. So that's really cool. But it's sort of this it's this future. Westworld was made by the Michael Crichton in written form, same guy who did Jurassic Park. So I felt a lot of that in the pilot episode, a lot of feeling of Jurassic Park. Why is that? Because this is sort of an augmented reality type, virtual reality type setup where it's like an adult theme park called Westworld, and it's the Old West, and people can pay a good amount of money to plug into this world and to live in it and to do whatever you want in it, from being with prostitutes to shooting to having duels to going anywhere you want. It's sort of like having rain as you do in Grand Theft Auto. And the kicker is everybody in this world are actually androids who look completely like human beings. I mean, completely. I mean, almost the way Ex Machina was, where that played by Alicia Vikander, who's become just a big-time actress. She was very good in that. But they're these amazingly humanoid androids, and so you go into this world, you just think you're with normal people, and they're people who just kind of bend to your whims because it's a theme park. So you can just sleep with whoever you want. I mean, you can kill whoever you want. There's like hundreds of thousands of different story ways that things can go based on what you want to do. I mean, it's the ultimate fantasy, quote unquote, reality that you can imagine. I mean, I watched the show and I'm like, wow, this would be something else. But Ed Harris is in it. Anthony Hopkins is in it. Was it Anna Paquin, I think, is the main android character in it. It's a really good show, and I gotta find a way to get through it. And I think my wife's in on it, which always kind of slows it down, puts sticks in the spokes. And I'm not saying that negatively. It's just how we all live. It gets a little tenuous when you want to start really watching stuff. But it's really good, and it looks like it's coming up on its finale, but it's fun to watch. We've really been watching This Is Us. Broadcast television has really taken a break in our lives for the last 4 years. There's been nothing really worth watching. There's been little things here or there. We watched the 24 reunion with Kiefer Sutherland. But outside, we really don't watch much. There was a time where we would watch a bunch of Law and Order SVU. It would just be kind of like a late show, a throwaway show that we'd watch before bed, because you don't need too much investment in the story. You sort of know it, and then each episode is a story unto itself. It's opened, it's closed. Good, go to bed. But it's sort of become a wasteland in a way on broadcast television. A couple of shows that brought us back though this year. One is This Is Us. This Is Us came out, and I was getting word from different people that I really trust, like, oh, this is a good show. You got to watch this show. You're seeing it on Facebook, all this. That normal germinating of a phenomenon was taking place where you go, okay, this has to be good. And it is quite a good show. So Broadcast TV found it. It has Mandy Moore in it. It has Milo Ventimiglia, who was in Heroes. It has Sterling Brown, who played Christopher Darden in The People vs. O.J. Simpson. This guy is like a high-level actor. He's going to be in everything coming up. I mean, he's probably in something that I'm not even, that's just not apparent to me right now, but he's probably in a big time thing. So he is awesome in it. But it's got a great plot twist. It's a really cool show. And the show feels at times like it has the good cheesy parts of a sitcom, but it's shot in a highly dramatic cinematography. I mean, it's just, the cinematography is so beautiful that you could watch it on its own just for that. I mean, as good as it gets. But it revolves, it's a great pilot show. And again, where you're dropped into this world. You don't really know what's happening. You think all the stories that are being displayed to you are happening concurrently in real time. And you get a great plot twist at the end, because you're sort of in all these different serial stories, and you don't understand why they tie together. One guy is the good-looking, muscular guy who is the star of a sitcom, who probably doesn't feel like he's utilizing his true artistic abilities to be in it, but he's making tons of money in it. It's kind of like, being on Big Bang Theory, where are those guys really just doing everything they've ever wanted to do on the stage and acting and going all for it? They're getting paid a ton of money, so you keep doing it. And it kind of has that feel with this, I think his name is Kevin in the show. And he plays this part called the Manny. So he's a nanny who's just this big muscular guy. And he has a blow up on the set. Like, I've had enough of this. And he's in a scene with Alan Thicke, which is kind of funny, who's pretending to be in this show. And it's very meta, So he has a blow up and loses it all and wants to go to New York to be in Broadway plays and things like that. And then there's a very kind of overweight girl who comes on the scene. She starts dating this kind of fun character in the show who you're exposed to. And then there's a black family who comes on, who are living their life, I think probably outside of Philadelphia or northern New Jersey. And they're all concurrently, you're getting dropped into all the stories. You don't understand why. And then there's one more story, which has Mandy Moore and Milo Ventimiglia as they are headed to the hospital to have triplets. And pretty much what happens is, you're thinking these are all the same thing, but what happens is at the end of the first episode, you find out that those three concurrent first stories I talked about, the Manny, the overweight girl, and the black family with the father obviously played, obviously black, but played by Sterling Brown, who was in People vs. O.J. Simpson, you find out that they're the triplets. And how this happens, and obviously Milo Ventimiglia did not have a black child, so you need to watch it to see how it happens, but it hooks you. It is a really, really well done show. Very good. The other show, Designated Survivor, what a concept. I said that Kiefer Sutherland brought us back to TV with 24 Reunion. Well, he really brought us back here. He plays a cabinet member in the president's cabinet, who on the night of the State of the Union is the designated survivor, which is this idea where you keep one person from the cabinet not in the room for the State of the Union in the case that some kind of catastrophic event happens, and then you need someone left to run the government. So you find out that this guy is left aside. He's actually sitting there like eating Chinese food, drinking beer in a sweatshirt and jeans as they're watching the State of the Union. And then you see things go black, and then he looks out the window and he can see that there's nothing left of the Capitol. And it's the story of him becoming the president with none of the cabinet, with none of the Congress or the House or anyone left. All the Supreme Courts would be gone because they're always sitting there, all the Supreme Court justices. And it's a fascinating story because it's post-apocalyptic in a way because everything's wiped out. But it's this guy who was ultimately apparently going to be fired, as he's the HUD, Housing and Urban Development director in the cabinet. And so he was going to be let go. He's sort of... He's not a forceful personality. People don't respect him. And it's fascinating to see him take the mantle of the presidency, just as almost any of us would be. I know he was in the cabinet, so he was close to power, but it's kind of like, here you are. You're now in charge of the greatest catastrophe and crisis of our lifetime. And how semblance is restored in a way, how life goes about. It's fascinating. It's very well done, called Designated Survivor. Last couple things here. DirecTV just came out with what could be the cord cutter's dream. It's called DirecTV Now, and you can pretty much get DirecTV without a satellite, without a cable subscription, over the internet. So with an internet connection, whether you're on a tablet, a phone, or a connected TV device such as an Apple TV, such as an Amazon Fire TV, or such as a Chromecast, Roku's apparently coming in 2017, you can set up on your streaming television full-on television as you know it from cable. It's through an app called DirecTV Now. You subscribe to it through the website, I believe it's just month to month. You can just cancel at any time. You could sign up at any time. And they have different tiers, just as they do for normal TV. And it's a really cool thing. It's what we've sort of been waiting for. I think it's what we were hoping Apple was going to come out with their whole quote unquote skinny bundle. And it's pretty killer. I don't think it's ready for the prime time yet if you're still a cable subscriber. I was playing around with it. I did do the 7-day trial and I canceled it immediately. Not because I hate it, but because I decided I'm not ready to quite go for this. I'm not ready to give up what I have, because one of the big difficulties is your cable provider usually provides you your internet and your phone. It's called the triple play, right? So if you get rid of your cable, they know that, and they're the ones providing your internet. So the price of the internet and phone now go up. So you have to sort of do a calculus of, is the price now of the internet I have, and you might have to get a higher bandwidth internet to take on the amount of TV you're going to be consuming over it. Although if you're able to stream Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, for the most part, it's enough. But it's going to be it. You're going to have no cable. So when your internet's down, you're screwed. If there's a halt in the service at all, you're screwed. And it's that normal thing. And I was getting this actually where I was playing around with thinking about going to DirecTV Now. Because what they do is they have these different tiers. One is $35 and it kind of gives you some basic stuff. One is $60 and it gives you next level stuff, including some sports channels. And then one is about $70. Now, what they were doing as the introductory offer is they were giving you the $60 one, or the 60 or 70. They were giving it for $35. And so you get a lot for $35 a month. Now, there is a fear that they could change that at any time, even though they say as long as you keep it at that introductory rate and you don't cancel your service, you'll be able to keep that. You'll be grandfathered in at that price, but you never know. So if you go ahead, get rid of your cable boxes, get rid of your cable to rely on this service, and then in 8 months, they're like, all right, we're jumping this up to 50 or 60 or 70, back to the original price. Now, the calculus that you had settled on in order to get rid of the cable, you're paying what you were paying before to have a product that you're completely reliant on, and reliant on the internet provided by the company who did provide you the cable. So it's a very tough thing to decide. It's almost a perfect product if you are a cord cutter to start with, because you're not losing anything. So my big thing was, I don't get NBA TV. I want NBA TV. It annoys me to no end. I can't get it. There's not a product where you can get NBA TV through the internet on its own. And my cable provider, Service Electric, does not give you NBA TV. It's crazy. Their sister company in Lehigh Valley, called Service Electric Cable Television, does give you NBA TV. I don't understand why one doesn't and one does. It annoys me to no end, because there's so many great games on NBA TV on a weekly basis. There's like the fan favorite night. They give you great games, and sometimes they take the great games from League Pass and put it there. I am a League Pass broadband subscriber, and I get blacked out of games that are on NBA TV. It just annoys me because NBA TV thinks that I should have it there, or my provider, so I get blacked out. So sometimes the best game of the night will be on NBA TV on a given night, and I don't get it. There was something cool with this service, though. This DirecTV Now gives you NBA TV at that $35 level, which is typically, what did they say? Which is typically $70, I think. So it's cool, though. You open the app. It's got the normal guide like you would get on a TV, where you can go through all the channels and you can do everything you need to do. It has a lot of channels. It even had in this area here, because it relies on your local area for certain regional needs. It has Yes Network. But I'm looking at it and I always say to myself, why do I have cable TV still? It's for sports. It's so I can watch the Mets on SNY, Sportsnet New York. It's why I have... SNY is a big deal. It's pretty much so I can have the Mets. My wife can have the Yankees. She would still have the Yankees on this service, obviously. But it's so I can put it on and I can just watch sports. We don't really do on demand, which this service doesn't even have yet. It will have cloud DVR at some point. It doesn't have it now. It does have some on demand. We don't watch things DVR, I'm saying. We watch a lot of stuff on demand. It does have some on demand. But I already have Hulu at a $5.99 price for some deal from, I think, American Express or some time deal they gave. And it does have a lot of I have a lot of the services I need: Netflix, Amazon Prime. But I was looking to get into this because I love the idea. Oh, I could have NBA TV. But then I was just thinking to myself, I don't watch any channels. Who cares if I get 100 channels on this? I don't watch any channels here. I watch sports, and I watch the Mets. And I used to watch the Nets, although it's hard to watch them now. And just the calculus of it didn't work out for me yet. It would almost be better if I can a la carte channels on a monthly basis and decide what works into a $15 or $20 bundle, good channels. Now, a cool thing with this DirecTV Now is if you get one of the packages, you can actually add on HBO for $5 a month. That's fantastic. And you will be able to, for certain services, you can now authenticate into the different apps like HBO Go, ABC Now, Watch ESPN. You can authenticate into those different apps with the credentials you use for your DirecTV Now. So that is a kind of neat thing. So for $5 a month on top of what you would get in a bundle here, you have HBO. Same thing with Cinemax. CBS and Showtime, owned by the same company, are still not in the service, although they will be at some point. They better. I mean, that would be crazy if they're not there. But there's a lot to like about this. But there was enough where I was just telling myself, I don't know. And can I trust that that $35 a month is really going to stay there? And as bad as cable can seem sometimes with the old hardware, the old looking user interface, all that, it still is a stable product that never drops. That night when I had DirecTV Now, I think I'm still within the 7-day trial. But I went home and I told my wife, I was like, let's try to just watch this to see if it works out for us. And I just couldn't get over the fact I wouldn't have SNY. It doesn't hurt me now, but it will then. And it's the psychology of knowing you can't have it that would make you want it more. There's many nights during the summer where I'm not even watching the Mets or I'm watching a part of the Mets. But the psychology of not knowing knowing I can't have it would drive me insane. That's just how my mind works. But I did try it that night, and I turned on NBA TV actually, and 2 times the app stuttered out and said, sorry, there was a problem, exit out and start. And I went, ooh, I can't be playing around with this. It's one thing when the product is fully realized and it's in its 5th incarnation where they've gone through all these user troubles. But if on night 1 this is already happening, I'm not going to give up everything to go out with this girl called DirecTV and lose my wife of cable. I just wasn't going to do it. So I maintained it. I wish my service would come out with NBA TV. Maybe I'll call them and see if there's some way by telling them, hey, this service has it, I can get this. Although DirecTV you can get in town, although I can't. I don't have good satellite placement on my yard, so I can't get DirecTV. I guess I would have had it. I guess my cable provider doesn't care. They're so small. What do they care? Although that should make them care more because like one customer means more. But it's a cool thing. Look, this is the first real product that came out with a major bundle of channels. And it does look good. It has a lot of good stuff in there. I think it had MLB Network, maybe NFL TV, a lot of good stuff. ESPN, ABC. But I just don't watch television. Everything I watch is on demand. Everything I told you about, the shows I'm watching from This Is Us to Westworld to Atlanta, they're all through authenticated apps. That's how I watch stuff. Or I watch it through Netflix. I'm trying to get through the previous season of Walking Dead. I got to get to Narcos. I got to get to all these shows, which leads me to Netflix, another big thing. This was announced on the same day that the DirecTV release announcement, when it was going to come out, which was November 30th. On this same day that was announced, Netflix came out with their little Easter egg, which was nice. We heard this was coming. Different services have done it, but it was something that Netflix said they would never do. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, said, we're a streaming product. We don't think there's a market for downloaded content. So everything in Netflix, if you notice this, you really only notice it if you're out of your house on data because it uses up a lot of data, but everything in Netflix is about streaming. You press play and it starts streaming. It's a progressive stream of the internet. Every minute it's on, it's pulling data. As opposed to where you can download content. We've all always been able to download content when we buy it, when we're talking about iTunes content, when we're talking about Amazon shows, when we're talking about Google, all the services that provide downloadable content in the form of movies or television that's been offered out there pretty much for the buy. Now, sometime earlier this year, Amazon came out in their Prime Video service on their apps, they came out with an option to download shows. Now, it was a certain amount of shows, I believe. I don't think it's everything they have, but you could download shows. I think it was most of it, actually, when I think of it, which is a big thing. If you're outside of the house, if you take a train, if you take a bus, if you commute, any time that you'd be watching television, you would be using cellular internet, which gets expensive. Video content uses up a lot. I think it can use up upwards of 2 to 4 gigs per hour. Depending on how the stream is, maybe 1 or 2. But a lot of us have 4, 5, 6 gigs a month in data. And most things we use won't use that up. Even if it's audio or if it's surfing the internet, that doesn't use a lot. And plus, we're able to supplement it by being in Wi-Fi areas to do other things. But it is a conscious decision of what you're going to do. And so downloaded content means makes a big deal for this audience. I can download something before leaving the house on Wi-Fi. I'm not using my data, and then I can watch it when I want to watch it. I could watch it do whenever I want. Another thing is, even if you do want to use your cellular data, I used to do this when I'd be taking the train. My train ride was an hour, so I went through a lot of zones. I would be watching something on cellular data, and it would move to the next cellular tower, and the content would go bad. It would go all pixelated. It would stop. It wasn't a clear stream all throughout. When you download it, it's there on your device locally that it's pulling from. You watch it all the way through. So Amazon had this. It was a great thing. I mean, I have to admit, make a confession. There are times I watch downloaded content in my car. I hook it into my Bluetooth system, and I keep the iPhone behind my steering wheel, and I try to peer down when I can I can peer down when I can to watch stuff, but mostly I'm listening to it. If I want to get through content, if I'm in the Oscar season when we have the Oscar podcast, and I need to get through movies, maybe movies that are farther down the list, which maybe won't win awards, but you want to watch them to be well-rounded in your discussion and your research, and be a discerning person when you're talking about the different things. I would do that, and the downloaded content is fantastic. My family has a house in the Thousand Islands. It's actually on an island. It's right across. You can see Canada from the island right across the way there. There is like no Wi-Fi ability there. And I always have this conception in my mind of, what can I do when I go to the island? And I'm only on this island in this house for like a total at most of 8 days. I didn't even get to go there this summer, but I'm there for a total of maybe 8 days. But it overtakes my thinking sometimes about how will I do on the island. And so my wife and I, almost like squirrels hoarding nuts for the winter, we will decide what we're going to watch. Well, she's not as enthusiastic as this as I am, but we'll decide what we're going to watch, and we'll buy a show, and we'll download it, and then we'll have it available there on the island to watch it whenever we want. It's a great thing because you're not going to be able to get anything else from it. You can't stream anything. You have to make the conscious decision to download the content you want and then head over there. It's almost like the way you buy a bunch of food to hoard over there. We're hoarding some kind of content. And so I love this idea where you can take shows with you, and you have the choice to download them and not use your data, your cellular data. Well, Netflix announced they went this way. They said we wouldn't do it, and they did it. Great job. Great turning around on your initial inclination to not do this. Awesome. You see the little download bar in your apps now. You have to update to the newest version of Netflix. Absolutely awesome. It's such a great thing. Not every show is there. I think they're going to continue to make deals to make more shows available. All of the Netflix created shows are pretty much download available, especially like Narcos, different shows. Interestingly enough, at last check, Marvel shows were not, and those are Netflix productions. But because I got to see Luke Cage still, that was not, but I have to assume that's coming. But this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. It's a big effing deal, as Joe Biden would say. So I really look forward to that. That's a really cool thing to have, to be able to download a season of a show, to go on. We always have this idea, what will we do when we're on an airplane? Because you can't really stream content. And it's like, how many times are we really on an airplane? But we're so worried, what will I do when I'm on an airplane? But now you can download Netflix shows, which is great. My final point, I'm in the process of moving over to what I would call the cord cutter of banks. I've been on Bank of America for pretty much my entire formative adult life. Ever since I opened a bank account, my parents have always been on Bank of America. Actually we were with, what the heck was that bank? Prudential Bank? No. So whatever the name of the TD Bank or something. So someone that Bank of America bought, basically, we were on. But for pretty much my whole life, I've been on it, and I've had enough. Anybody who's with big banks, which most of us are, have had enough. You're putting your money somewhere to be safe, and the very people you have to watch out for the most of taking it are the bank themselves. Banks with their overdraft fees, with their fees to do certain things, with their just gross practices at times, especially after the financial crisis. They are not making money like they once did. The happy days, the good times are gone. And so what they do is they try to take a little bit from everybody's account without them looking, and then make some kind of legislation behind the scenes or some kind of privacy policy or rules to say why that was okay without telling you, of course. And it just drives you nuts. The people you have to watch your money from the most are the banks who are holding it to be safe. I mean, it's absurd. It's terrible. Wells Fargo, which was supposed to be the one who made it through the crisis and was the best bank to use, well, they just got done with a terrible case where the CEO lost his job, everything, where they were falsely signing up ridiculous amounts of customers to accounts that those customers didn't sign up themselves because they had to reach some kind of quarterly, yearly goal for signups to certain financial products. It's terrible what these people do. They're one step from being rapacious Wall Street entities. I mean, it's gross, and I've had enough. So I decided last week, after I looked at my account and a $35 overdraft fee had been taken, $35. So my money went under. So you're going to take $35 more for it going under? What the heck? It's crazy. And so after I called that day, and I was able to get the $35 gone because anybody who's married probably has several accounts because you're all feeding into different accounts. You're doing this. Well, in my constellation of accounts, which are just 2 at the time, I have plenty of money to cover that shortfall. It's just that a few people checked or cashed checks on one day, which put me under for the moment. And then the next morning I saw it and I immediately refilled it because I had more than enough to cover it. It drives you nuts that they don't send you the alert or the email when the damn thing happens. They wait until the next day so that they can take the $35 and then they'll tell you there was an overdraft. I did end up getting that email at about 1 p.m. the next day. Now I had taken care of the transfer the minute I woke up and I saw this, and then I called in, and I love how they can just remove it on a whim too, by the way. So much for this being a ironclad rule about you can't lose, your money can't go under, but you can convince them to just refund it pretty much. I mean, it's insane, but I've had enough of this. It's just, it's crazy. And then on Thanksgiving, I went to the gym in the morning, early morning, and then I was supposed to get the bagels because we like to get bagels on Thanksgiving morning. I go into this bagel store I haven't been in. They're like, we only take cash. And we don't have an ATM, but there's an ATM across the road. So Lakeland Bank is a big lake here, or big lake. It's a big bank here that has a lot of branches just in this area. It's probably like a 35, 40 mile radius where there's a bunch of them. The corporate headquarters is like right down the road here. And so I went to this Lakeland Bank ATM. I took out money, and then you're in the position where you're like, well, they're going to take money from me for the ATM fee. It's just the rule of the game. I see it's going to be $3. So I'm like, well, I'd rather take 20, but I guess I'll take 40 out so that the percentage of $3 on 40 is much better than 3 on 20, which is what, like 15, that's 15% of the money if you're taking out 20, but it's like 7.5 if you're taking out 40. It's insane. And so whatever, that's the rule of the road. There's no Bank of America near me really, or near the vicinity of where I was. And I took that out fully knowing the $3 charge, whatever, went and got my bagels. It's Thanksgiving. Let's not get crazy. Let's not get Curb Your Enthusiasm Larry David about this. And I go home, and then the next day I'm just looking at my account. And so this makes no sense to me. Lakeland Bank took out $3. Fine, that's the rule. But then Bank of America goes and takes out $2.50. $2.50 for what? For me to get my money through a different bank? So at the end of the day, I gave up $5.50 to take my money out. It's insane. I've had enough of this. Nobody is an angel in this industry. Obviously, you have to be on top and cognizant of what's happening with your money at any moment, as if there's a money manager trying to, or as if there's like one of these behind the music's managers who you heard of in those VH1 specials where they were taking the money behind the scenes and using it on all different things. Like, it's almost as though some of these banks have become that. And so I made the decision, you know what? It's time to change. My coworker who works in my office many years ago had gone to Ally Bank. And here's the funny thing with Ally Bank. I said they're the cord cutter in a way of banks, but they're sort of like the Hulu cord cutter. Hulu is an internet-only television product, obviously, but it's actually owned by a consortium of the different major networks. I believe like NBC, ABC, a few of those actually own it. So it's really big business owning this cord-cutting product, this internet product. And Ally's like that. Ally's got a hilarious history when you really look at it. They started in like the 20s as the financing arm of General Motors in order to be able to give people loans for their cars. And over time, they built in more financial products, and they became a bigger financing arm and all this. And then they never were a retail bank. They never accepted deposits like a traditional bank. And then around the time of the banking crisis, they wanted to tap in to the TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, the bailout. And the only way to tap into TARP, I like that one. The only way to do that was to become a retail bank. So at the moment they go, ooh, we're going to get a big infusion of money here. And obviously General Motor, GMAC, as it was called, being part of the car industry, an arm of General Motors, when the car industry was being hit, they want to get into the party. They want to get a huge government infusion of cash. And so they became a bank. And I think they were called GMAC still. But now with the stink of the Troubled Asset Relief Program, with the stink that was on the car industry, I don't think they were getting a ton of business. And so they decided, let's start a different bank. It'll be an internet only bank. We'll save a lot of money by not having branches. Plus we can't really create all these branches at this point anyway. It's not going to be worth our while. And we need to have a retail bank. So let's start a bank that's just through the internet. You can't actually put cash into it. Digital money can do whatever you want with it. You can have direct deposit of your paycheck. You can take out any money you want. But what they do, they have great customer satisfaction. They have a great customer service. They have a really good product online. They have a great app. I mean, all these do. But they were early on with the taking pictures of checks as a way to deposit money, because you really can't do that at just open ATMs. And then the other real cool thing they do on a savings account, they'll give you 1% APY. So they're giving you 1% of your money that's in the bank. A lot of banks aren't even giving you anything. They'll give you like 0.001. So 1% is good. And they can do that because they have the government backing them pretty much. The government owns a lot of them. Or I think still does, owns a lot of them. And so they are FDI insured, which is different than that, but they have the government fronting their ability to become just like the perfect bank. And what they did is, since they don't have banks, ATMs are sort of out of the question. So you could go to any ATM and they would refund you at the end of the month for all of the fees that were deducted from your account, all those ATM fees. So if you had at $3 a pop, if you took out money 10 times, that was like $30. You'd get those $30 back at the end of the month. Now they are starting to tighten things up a little bit. Fees are coming up on certain things. You can't do other certain things, but I'm going to them anyway. This just feels like where I need to go. They're not doing the full unlimited ATM fees give back, but they are giving you up to $10 a month. And then they joined into this group called I think the All Points ATM network. And so you can see on a map where any ATM is that is like a feeless ATM. And there are a lot of them. They're in places like 7-Eleven, Quick Check gas stations, CVS's. They're in sort of these very agnostic places that aren't banking outlets, but that are just, they're sort of an open source ATM network in a way. So that's open for discussion. So I don't have any Bank of Americas in my town. I have to go about 15, 20 minutes away to get to one. And that's just too far. And now that we have a babysitter, better. We have more need to get cash. We never did before. So this Ally Bank, what it'll let me do, it's going to let me earn 1% on my money that's in the account. It has full checking. It'll give you checks. It'll give you debit cards. It can give you credit cards. And you can take money out anywhere for up to the $10 in fees per month. And then you could take out money from any of these all points networks. So I'm going there. The cord cutter of banks, the Hulu of banks, whatever you want to call it. But you can't trust any of these banks. That's the problem. I mean, it's just really, it drives you nuts. It drives you nuts how much you have to watch your own money. I mean, it's out of control. And I mean, how many people are having those overdraft fees taken out who don't call up? Because it's just a little bit of a hard step to do. You also feel a little embarrassed. Give me the notification right away. There's no way you call up and ask them. There's no way to get that notification in real time. Sorry, we can't really do that because they're trying to be funny. It's funny business. It's monkey business. They're trying to take your money because how many accounts let that $35 go? $35 is a lot of money. $35 is how much that DirecTV Now is per month. Even at the base level, and then at that rate, at that introductory rate at the $60 one, $35 a month. That's a lot of money, $35. And they're just taking it because all your money's out for the moment. They're not going to check. And then the other part is they're like, well, you could set up overdraft protection. And I go, oh, that sounds cool. What's the catch? They're like, well, what it does is it transfers money from one of your accounts in Bank of America that has enough money. It transfers it into the other one to make sure you're fine for a $12 fee. A $12 fee for the courtesy, they said? $12 fee? Oh, it's out of control. It's just absolutely out of control. They're just rapacious. And you know what? Because they're in a bad place. They need to make money. Bankers don't make money anymore. There's no margin there anymore. So let's just take little fees from this. Let's take a fee to do this. Let's take a fee. And they just make, $35 is a lot of money. What's that? Over 3 months of Netflix? I mean, come on, man. Even before they were streaming music, you could buy 3 albums with that. That's a lot of money. And what did it do? It's all digital. It's all made up. They're the ones holding the money. What did your account going under really do to them in that overnight? Did it ruin their overnight markets? I don't know. But I've gone there. I'm sure I'm going to regret it at some point with the Ally Bank. I'm sure, just as I said with DirecTV Now, at any point they could just decide 8 months in, a year in, okay, no one's getting 35 anymore. It's now back to 60. And then you've given up your cable, just as I've given up my bank or will give up my bank. But I'm testing it first. I'm piloting it. I'm setting up the accounts. I'm not going to leave my Bank of America yet. But I think I'm going to go this way. I've just had enough. I want to be in more control. I want a little bit of a change. I want to be appreciated, man. But, there's pluses and minuses to everything. So we'll see where we go with that. But guys, thank you so much for listening to me. This meant a lot to get all this out there again. It's been a long time since I did a solo cast. I said October 23rd, and it's been since October 11th since I've done an actual live in the flesh podcast. I did release one in the interim. My high school classmate, Aleko Eskentarian, who was probably one of the better American-born soccer players ever. He had come out with a Players Tribune article about his history with concussions, and he really came out of I'm not going to use the word came out of the closet, but he really hid how bad this concussion thing was. And I think he was not embarrassed by it, but he was wary to talk about it. And he talked about it in a big way in the Players Tribune. So I thought, hey, let's remarket that episode I did with him. So I did release that through the different podcast channels. I did put the original date because it was from June of 2014. I did release that, but it had been a lot of episodes where I was, or I had a guest on, I was interviewing, I was conversing with another. It takes a lot. It's 2 different sides of the brain to do a solo cast and to do a 2-person podcast. And I was a little antsy, nervous about getting into doing this one because you kind of lose your steam, you lose your wind. It's kind of like running. And even if you sprint, if you consider one being long running, and you consider one being sprinting, I don't know which would be which, but if you really focus on just doing one for a while, you feel like you lose the ability to do the other, even though maybe it just takes you a little bit to get into it. I was a little down, obviously, from the election. But it's time to get back up. It's time to get back to our joys. Life will go on. The sun will come up tomorrow, and we need to really, we need to get our stores together, our storage facilities internally, all that we have, our own bandwidth. We need to get it together to oppose those things we don't agree with. But we also just need to warily watch to see what's happening before we reflexively just kick into gear and be anti. I'm against it. That was that the producers? I'm against it. I don't know. Well, we'll see you later, folks. Thanks so much.